Mr. Lehmann, welcome to Radio Free Europe.
Thank you.
A former US prosecutor, but now in Moldova you are the chairperson of the Prosecutors Vetting Commission.
That's correct.
It's a big distance between these two countries. Why did you accept to come to Moldova?
I think it's a very worthwhile project. I've spent a lot of time over the last 25 years working on rule of law and legal projects in this part of the world, and I hope that I have a lot to contribute.
Okay, let's try to discuss more about the vetting process in our studio. Please follow me. Christopher Lehmann, sunteți președinte al Comisiei de Evaluare a Procurorilor, o comisie care verifică integritatea etică și financiară a unor categorii de procurori din Republica Moldova. În trecut, vreme de 30 de ani, dumneavoastră ați fost procuror în Statele Unite ale Americii, apoi ați lucrat în state ca Rusia și Ucraina. Iar acum, în Republica Moldova, dumneavoastră veți verifica averile și interesele managerilor Procuraturii Generale, dar și a procurorilor din procuraturile specializate. Înainte însă să începeți acest proces de vetting în Republica Moldova, vetting în rândul procurorilor, ca să fim exacti, a izbucnit un scandal legat de numele deja fostei dumneavoastră colege, Tatiana Răducanu. Dumneaei era bănuită de legături corupte cu oligarhul fugar Ilan Șor și controversatul om de afaceri Veaceslav Platon și a demisionat din funcție, dar a negat acuzațiile care îi se aduceau. Când și cum ați aflat dumneavoastră despre aceste bănuieli în raport cu doamna Răducanu?
Well, actually, I correct one thing in the question, which is the vetting started for the Prosecutor Commission back in December of 2023. So we've already been working for almost 6 months on the process of vetting prosecutors, and worked with Judge Răducanu for the first 6 months of the process. She's already participated with her 5 other colleagues on the commission on our initial cases. I learned in the news, like everybody else, about her resignation. What I will say, it's very important for the commission to not comment or get involved in political issues or political scandals that may be going on. We are an independent, neutral body charged with a specific task, which is limited to the evaluation of prosecutors for financial and ethical integrity. So we're going to focus on our job and not be drawn into commenting on the various political scandals of the day. What I will say is we did issue a statement shortly after Judge Răducanu's resignation from the commission, stating that we would proceed with 5 members. That allowed us to do our work. 5 members is a quorum for the commission, and indeed, for the first 3 or 4 months before Nadezhda Triptievsky was appointed to the commission, in fact, we did work with 5 members. So there's nothing that keeps the commission from doing its work. And actually, the pre-vetting commission is currently functioning with 4 of 6 members. It has 2 vacancies, and the vetting commission for judges is functioning with 5 members. It also has a vacancy. So we acknowledged in that statement the professionalism that we experienced in working with Judge Răducanu, and we were grateful and remain grateful for her many contributions to the work of the vetting process, both at our commission and over the last 2 years with the pre-vetting commission.
Este adevărat că acea declarație pe care a emis-o atunci Comisia de Evaluare a Procurorilor, că ea a fost una laconică. Înțeleg argumentele dumneavoastră, dar totuși în rândul oamenilor care urmăresc acest proces mai există unele întrebări și de aceea am să încerc să vi le pun și dumneavoastră să-mi răspundeți în măsura în care puteți să o faceți sau vă permite funcția să o faceți. Așadar, întrebarea, atunci când s-a întâmplat acest scandal, când au ieșit la iveală aceste informații, noi am și încercat să invităm pe cineva din comisia dumneavoastră la emisiunea Pe Agendă ca să înțelegem de fapt cum ați reacționat imediat după acea situație și dacă ați cerut cumva verificări suplimentare, inclusiv poate în privința altor membri ai comisiei.
So I agree with the premise of your question that the public is and should be very interested in the vetting process, and that is a priority for us to communicate what vetting is, why it matters, who's being vetted, what's involved. I think all of those questions are extremely important, and the more that the public does understand about the process, I think the more effective the entire process will be. What's important to understand, I think, is that for the vetting commission, we must be very objective in our evaluation. We evaluate prosecutors on the basis of the information that they provide to us and the information that's provided to us by the relevant Moldovan government agencies and other sources. And so our work is confined really to a close examination of the file, of the candidate, of the circumstances. And we have to do that in a larger political context here in Moldova. We're aware of that, but we didn't comment on all of the controversy at the time. I don't intend to, I will leave to Moldovan politicians and others involved in the process the responsibility to comment, because I don't want to do anything that would undermine the real work, which is to take a close look at the candidates themselves, as I said, the information they provided, their files, and look objectively at them. They're all entitled to the most fair evaluation process that we can possibly give them.
Eu o să continui să fiu avocatul publicului și a celor care urmăresc până la urmă acest proces și aș vrea să vă mai întreb câteva detalii aici. Bănuielile despre presupusele legături ale doamnei Răducanu cu persoane care au probleme cu justiția au fost date publicității cu puțin timp înainte ca să înceapă viitoarele audieri publice ale procurorilor. Dumneavoastră v-ați pus vreodată întrebarea în acest timp dacă a fost întâmplător momentul în care au ieșit la iveală aceste informații sau nu?
I'm really not going to be able to speculate on the timing of when investigations are started. Again, we had already initiated our first hearings back in March. So the process of evaluation, the initial submissions by the first batch of prosecutors received in December, the analysis of their materials that were submitted occurred in January, February, March. We followed up with many rounds of questions to some of the candidates. We had the initial hearings already in March. So it wasn't as though we were only beginning our work in mid-May. It is true that we had assembled the international members of the commission in mid-May because we had planned all along to continue hearings. And in fact, we did do, I think, a total of 9 hearings at the latter part of May, the beginning of June, to continue, the candidate review. So I can't speculate as to, the timing of investigations that were opened by the prosecution service.
După acest caz, v-ați întrebat dacă membrii Comisiei de Evaluare a Procurorilor ar trebui să treacă și ei printr-un anumit vetting, de exemplu, înainte să fie aprobați, numiți de Parlament în această funcție?
The commission members do undergo a sort of vetting. The Moldovan national members have submitted financial declarations and declarations, and that is on our website. Anybody can go and look at the declarations they have submitted. The international members are interviewed by a hearing before the parliamentary committee. Their public biographies are available. In this case, there was no accusation at all against any international member. So.
În ce măsură acest incident credeți că afectează procesul de vetting, de evaluare în rândul procurorilor?
I don't think it does. I think that the process is well established. The laws are clear. The regulations and the rules of procedures for implementing those laws are clear. The materials, the forms that have to be completed by the prosecutors are very clear. The process is going forward as it was before and as it will continue. So I really see that in no way does this really have any effect whatsoever on the day-to-day work of the Commission. We're functioning exactly the same at the beginning of, or now what is it, June 12th, as we were at the beginning of May. So there's not really any change in how we function. Obviously, it's disruptive to lose a member of your Commission. We were fortunate that Parliament quickly identified a replacement member for our Commission, so we are back up to the full 6 members. That is useful just in moving our cases along and moving our hearings along. So we're grateful to be back at a full 6-member roster on the Commission.
Dumneavoastră ați fost procuror federal în Statele Unite ale Americii și aici îi evaluați pe procurorii din Republica Moldova. Judecând după cum se desfășoară procesul și ce presupune acest vetting, dumneavoastră ați vrea să treceți printr-un asemenea proces dacă ați fi procuror aici?
It's a good question, and the answer is yes, because I did. We have processes in the United States for the U.S. Department of Justice, which are also quite intrusive. We go through very detailed FBI checks every 5 years. That involves filling out a long personal statement and declaration, and it involves many of the same kinds of things that the Moldovan prosecutors are asked to report about. So financial issues, travel issues, where do you live? What property do you own? In addition, the FBI and the people that work for them will go out and do background interviews of your family and neighbors and friends, and not necessarily the names that you gave them, but other names, so that they can independently verify what you're saying. So because of that, I'm very aware that this can be a stressful process to anyone that's undergoing it. And we understand that this is an extraordinary process for the Moldovan prosecutors. It's new. It's quite a bit different from just filing a declaration on an annual basis with the NIA. And so we're very cognizant that there is a level of discomfort and fear on the part of the prosecutors that are going through this. We want them to participate. We want them to succeed. I mean, it's very rewarding when we look closely at a candidate, when we have them at a hearing, and we're able to find no serious doubts as to their ethical and financial integrity. And I think that's what Moldova wants, is a judiciary and a prosecution service where people have gone through vetting and it's been shown that they are not hiding wealth or hiding corrupt activities.
Judecând după experiența Statelor Unite, credeți că și în Republica Moldova ar merita ca aceste verificări să se facă odată la 5 sau la 10 ani și să nu se facă doar o singură dată prin acest proces de vetting, cum se întâmplă acum. Vă întreb asta și pentru că unii dintre procurori sau magistrați spuneau că faptul că cineva trece vettingul sau pre-vettingul în acest moment nu înseamnă neapărat că peste o perioadă de timp această persoană va rămâne incoruptibilă.
It's an excellent question. I think it is in part a decision that the Moldovan policymakers and people need to think about. Certainly, you already have the annual declaration process, and I do think one outcome of this vetting is that people will be more careful going forward about making sure that their declarations are complete and accurate than they may have been in the past. So I do think the knowledge that in 5 or 6 or 8 years somebody could come back and look at the 2025 and the 2026 declarations will help to keep people, I think, accurate in what they're reporting, and it'll make the whole declaration process more meaningful, and people will take it more seriously. It is true that this kind of vetting is extraordinary, and that word extraordinary means it's really a word that is used by the Council of Europe and the Venice Commission, and it's a way of recognizing that it is intrusive into the judiciary and the prosecutors, and that it is a one-time event that is in response to a history or concerns about a history of corruption in those institutions, corruption that has diminished the public trust in those institutions. So yes, this is a one-time event. I don't think we would expect something on the level of the current vetting process to become a regular thing. It's too intrusive, it's too involved, it's too expensive. But I do think having gone through this experience, having been examined, will make people much more careful about A, how they conduct themselves, but B, how they report about their financial lives and their ethical lives in the future.
Chiar și cu această schimbare de membri la Comisia de Evaluare a Procurorilor, verificarea acestora va continua și acum Comisia, cum spuneați și dumneavoastră mai devreme, este în componență deplină după ce Parlamentul a numit-o în locul judecătoarei Tatiana Răducanu pe Virginia Moraru. Ea va îndeplini funcția predecesoarei sale și verificarea procurorilor, inclusiv audierea lor publică, va începe cu procurorii de la Procuratura Anticorupție. Republica Moldova are 2 procuraturi specializate, Procuratura Anticorupție și cea privind combaterea criminalității organizate și cauze speciale. Dumneavoastră vi s-a spus, vi s-a explicat de ce începeți anume cu Procuratura Anticorupție? Tot vi s-a spus acest motiv, că așa spune legea, sau ați avut și o altă explicație din partea autorităților?
Well, I think the most important thing is we haven't been told anything by anybody in terms of how to conduct our work. And if we were, we would say, thank you very much for your advice, and we'll confer as a commission, look at the law, and make our own independent decisions. The law is, in fact, clear to start with the specialized units. The anti-corruption unit is first in the alphabet, so it would be logical to start with that office. And if whichever one we started with, there'd be questions why you started with that one rather than the other one. So you have to start somewhere.
Comisia a solicitat procurorilor notificați să depună declarațiile de avere și de interese personale. Dacă nu își pot justifica averile și interesele, atunci procurorii riscă să fie demiși din sistem. Dar mai au și șansa să părăsească sistemul înainte să înceapă procesul de vetting și atunci nimeni nu-i va mai verifica. Mulți judecători deja au făcut asta atunci când trebuiau să fie examinați. Deci au preferat să plece din sistem în loc să treacă prin această verificare. Dumneavoastră vă așteptați la plecări masive și în rândul procurorilor?
It's an excellent question. I do expect that there will probably be some resignations. I don't know whether it'll be on the same scale as we saw with some of the judicial resignations, or whether it'll be a smaller group. I will acknowledge that up until now, we had been focused on the Law 26 evaluations, which are evaluations for people that want to seek a position, for example, on one of the boards of the Superior Council of Prosecutors. So it's a more voluntary process. They knew that they would have to go through an evaluation, and the stakes were lower because if they fail, they're just removed from being a candidate. Now, as we move into 252, our role changes a little bit because we'll just be doing a report on the subject to the Superior Council of Prosecutors, which will make the ultimate decision on whether they would remain in their position or not. But it's obviously still a very intensive process. We've talked about it. It's obviously intrusive. And so that is going to have to be a judgment that each individual makes as to whether they're comfortable going through that or not. And I expect some resignations. I hope it's not a huge number, but we'll have to wait and see.
10 procurori anticorupție și-au dat demisia pentru a evita procesul de vetting, inclusiv un procuror care se ocupa de dosarul numit generic frauda bancară. Conducerea Procuraturii Anticorupție spune că această situație creează un risc major pentru activitatea instituției și se va resimți direct asupra capacității de gestionare a dosarelor de corupție de nivel înalt.
În cât timp estimați că ar putea să înceapă audierile publice ale procurorilor anticorupție?
It probably will not be until later this summer, simply because we still have a very small staff. We have a much smaller staff than the Judicial Vetting Commission at the current time, and we will need to take everything that they've submitted. We'll need to then make requests to relevant Moldovan government agencies, such as the tax service and the border police and other agencies, collect that information. So that probably means and then send out usually to the candidates follow-up questions, not with a 20-day turnaround, but usually with like a 5-day turnaround. That still probably puts us 30 to 45 days down the road before we can sit as a commission and kind of look at where we are with the candidate. Normally what we do when we notify someone of the hearing is we would send them a kind of a short list of the areas about which we have doubts that we want to address at the hearing. If you've watched our hearing, you'll see the hearings that we have online, you'll see that the hearings usually go into several areas on a candidate's submission where we might have follow-up questions. And so I would expect the initial candidates would probably come to a hearing in late July, early August.
Ați spus că nu aveți suficientă lume care să muncească la acest proces de verificare a procurorilor. Care este motivul lipsei staffului?
It's challenging to find enough applicants. We have announcements. If there are people interested in working, there are some announcements for qualified people with legal backgrounds to join us. I think it's a very competitive job market, at least for talented people in Moldova right now.
Șefa Procuraturii Anticorupție, Veronica Drăgălin, a fost citată recent spunând că procurorii din sistem nu au încredere că procedura de vetting va fi obiectivă. Cum îi răspundeți dumneavoastră ca președinte al Comisiei de Evaluare a Procurorilor? Ce argumente puteți aduce că această procedură este cu adevărat obiectivă?
The system is objective. The system is implemented in accordance with the laws and the procedures. The candidates are entitled to submit whatever information they think is relevant. the candidates are entitled to a public hearing, and we do everything to keep this process out of any political limelight. This is a process that is focused, like a court case, strictly on the facts that are presented to the commission and the evidence that is submitted to the commission either by the candidate or from other sources that are relevant.
Tot șefa Procuraturii Anticorupție spune că vetting-ul nu e cea mai potrivită metodă de a ne garanta că în rezultat voi avea o echipă integră. Închei citatul. Ea amintește când la prevetting o persoană cu dosar penal pentru corupție a trecut acea verificare și a ajuns în CSM. Bineînțeles că dumneavoastră și comisia dumneavoastră nu purtați niciun fel de răspundere pentru ce s-a întâmplat în alte comisii. Dar cum vă veți asigura că astfel de situații, de exemplu, nu se vor strecura și în Comisia de Evaluare a Procurorilor atunci când veți face aceste evaluări?
We will look carefully at everything that is presented to us. We will do the research necessary. We'll work with all of the relevant Moldovan government agencies to collect information. We will look at open source information about candidates. We'll interview other people if necessary, people that have either bought or sold property, for example. Find out from them if the prices that are in the contract are actually the prices that they paid. Ask questions of third parties. Do what it's necessary to find out to the best of our abilities whether, and we have to remember the standard, whether we have a serious doubt about the ethical or financial integrity of the candidate that the candidate has failed to mitigate.
Domnule Lehmann, dumneavoastră ați urmărit probabil și până acum cum s-a desfășurat această reformă a justiției în Republica Moldova, care are la bază procesul de pre-vetting și vetting, adică verificarea oamenilor, judecătorilor și procurorilor. Deși a fost anevoioasă și criticată, această procedură de verificare, spun politicienii, e cea mai importantă, e piatra de temelie a reformei justiției. Dar dumneavoastră ați reușit să vă creați până acum o impresie. Credeți că această reformă este una de succes sau, dimpotrivă, este un eventual eșec pentru că nu s-a încheiat încă?
I think it's a potential success. I think it's very much an ongoing process, but I think we have well-articulated laws that were carefully reviewed by the Venice Commission, which is part of the European mechanism at the Council of Europe, reviewed many times by the Venice Commission for compliance with the European Convention on Human Rights. So we have procedures that accord accountability and fairness to the participants. These procedures are meticulous, and because they are careful and they do provide protections, they may not be going as quickly as possible. And I think it's important to recognize that going forward in a careful manner, affording rights and dignity to the people that are participating in it is as or more important than just rushing through the process to get it done. And I think that everybody recognizes that these kind of reforms are fundamental to what the European Union is expecting Moldova to achieve as part of its accession process.
Este adevărat că această reformă va dura mult. Aceasta a încercat clasa politică să explice când a început procesul de pre-vetting și vetting cetățenilor. Dar în Republica Moldova oamenii au auzit de foarte multe ori că sunt probleme în justiție și că ea se reformează, dar durează și durează. La modul estimativ, în cât timp credeți că ar putea resimți cetățenii aceste schimbări pe care clasa politică încearcă să le facă în justiție?
So there's two answers to that. One is the technical legal answer, which is the statute continues the work of the Commission through the end of 2025. But I think Another part of the answer is that, in fact, there already is some success in that the European accession process is on track. And so the EU is recognizing that the vetting process is moving forward in a productive way, and they have sort of taken the fact of that process moving forward, looking at candidates, in some cases failing candidates, and incorporated into the overall accession evaluation.
Ce v-a uimit în sistemul de justiție din Republica Moldova atunci când ați început să interacționați cu el?
An interesting question. I had 25 years of experience in justice systems in the region, so some familiarity to structures in neighboring countries. I won't say that there was anything in particular that surprised me. I mean, the roles of judges and prosecutors are similar to the other countries in the region, so I felt as though I was on somewhat familiar territory.
Dar există anumite elemente specifice ale sistemului de justiție în Republica Moldova și în Ucraina sau în Rusia, țări în care dumneavoastră ați mai lucrat. Deci există elemente distinctive ale sistemului de justiție în țările post-sovietice și dacă da, v-aș ruga să ne oferiți câteva exemple, desigur, dacă credeți că sunt relevante.
I don't have any sort of examples that leap out. What I will say is, during the time I was working in both Ukraine and Russia, I was exposed to a lot of corruption in the judiciary. I mean, and the prosecutor's office. I mean, people would tell me things. I was sometimes surprised how frank they would be about corruption and even participation in corruption. So I'm realistic about the processes, and as we begin to explore the specific cases, unfortunately, I do think there will be candidates that do fail the evaluation process.
Ați spus la un moment dat în interviul nostru că dacă cineva ar fi încercat să spună Comisiei de evaluare a procurorilor ce să facă, ați fi spus mulțumim pentru sfat, dar nu o să facem asta. Aș vrea să vă întreb însă dacă de când sunteți în Republica Moldova în calitate de președinte al acestei comisii, a încercat cineva să vă abordeze și să discute cu dumneavoastră într-un alt mediu despre acest proces de evaluare a procurorilor decât mediul profesional.
No, we've been fortunate in that regard. We obviously don't make an effort to have casual conversations or outreach with judges or prosecutors. We draw, sort of a curtain around making any social outreach because we want to remain sort of isolated, insulated, and objective in our work. So we have not had any government officials or anybody telling us how to conduct our work or how we should handle cases or anything like that. Many people have questions about the process, and we're happy to explain what we're doing. And I welcome opportunities like this where we can talk about the process, because I do think it's important that people understand what vetting is. It is an unusual process. It's not a regular process, but I am comfortable in saying that nobody in the Moldovan government or elsewhere has approached us in any way to interfere with what we're doing. So I'm happy about that.
Mr. Lehmann, thank you for this interview and for your time.
Thank you.
Acesta este podcastul video Pe Agendă, cu ediție nouă în fiecare zi de miercuri. Îl puteți găsi pe pagina de internet a Europei Libere, dar și pe canalul nostru de YouTube, unde vă puteți abona la Pe Agendă ca să nu ratați nicio ediție nouă. Pentru că aici încercăm să găsim răspunsuri la întrebările care contează pentru dumneavoastră.